Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Pass the Brew. I'm your host, Mark Cunningham, and as usual, I am super excited for our guest today. We've got Carlos Sims Jr. from Happy Home Coffee Roasters, which is currently in Michigan, soon to be in Hawaii, which we're going to talk about on the podcast. But pumped to have him on. He's someone I've just recently connected with in the coffee world. I've got some of his coffee shipping up to me now. I was hoping to have it for this conversation, but that's okay. It's still going to be a good one. Before we dive into the conversation with Carlos, just wanted to talk a little bit about some sports as well, because that is part of the podcast. So last announcement that I saw in terms of sports is that the Hall of Fame game is canceled for the NFL. MLB has agreed to a 60-game season, and obviously basketball a while ago made the decision to come to Orlando. There's still some players are sitting out or sitting in. But pumped that sports is potentially coming back soon. It is a bummer, obviously, that we don't have it right now. Myself, I've been filling the void by watching old games from last year on NFL Game Pass and watching the full broadcast with the commercials and everything, because it feels a little bit more normal. Almost feels like it's happening right now. But the one weird thing is when you watch games that happened in December, there is commercials for Christmas stuff. So that's a bit weird in May and June and July, watching these games and, commercials for Christmas stuff and snow on the ground and cars being sold with winter tires and all this kind of stuff is a little bit bizarre. But yeah, and I realize I haven't actually talked about this yet, but let me tell you about my favorite teams in sports. So as you know from previous podcasts, my favorite sport is football. And my favorite team in football is the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the reason San Francisco 49ers is, so my dad is from California originally, grew up in Fresno, and his dad was a huge 49ers fan. His brothers are all 49ers fans. And then my older brother is a 49ers fan as well. And so I grew up with a poster of Steve Young on my door, Joe Montana as well. As a kid, I didn't really know who they were, but I was like, yeah, I'll cheer for them. And so was a 49ers fan, and have for most of my life as a 49ers fan, unfortunately dealt with a terrible team. There was a little bit of time there with Harbaugh and Kaepernick where they were dominant, and then there was some internal struggles with the team, and it kind of fell apart, and they were bad again for a while. And now we're back to prominence with Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo and John Lynch running the show. So really excited about the 49ers prospects this year. And then in terms of other sports, in basketball, my favorite team is the Dallas Mavericks. And that's because when I first got into basketball, Dirk Nowitzki was a baller. And so I was really, I watched him in the 2004 finals against the Heat. That was a tough one to watch, but it was exciting nonetheless. I love college basketball, probably more than professional basketball. UNC, University of North Carolina Tar Heels, my team as well. And for college football, it's the Oregon Ducks, and my friend Garrison, who is an Auburn fan, him and I had a bit of a go at the first game of last year where they played each other, and unfortunately Auburn got the better of them. Yeah, that was tough. But yeah, Oregon Ducks. So, and then in hockey, my favorite team is the Colorado Avalanche, and that was because as growing up as a goalie, my favorite player was Patrick Waugh, and so obviously like the Avalanche. So that's a little bit about my favorite teams in sports. Again, super excited about our conversation with Carlos here. And so we're going to dive in and listen to that now. Hope you guys enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pass the Brew. Super excited to have Carlos Sims Jr. on with us, owner of Happy Home Coffee Roasters in Michigan. Currently in Michigan, soon to be in Hawaii, which is super exciting. I think I said this before we went live, but I've got your coffee coming up. Was hoping to have it for this conversation, but I'll have it for the next one with somebody else. So that's fine. Pumped to have your coffee though. So welcome onto the podcast, Carlos.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited.
Yeah. So first of all, how are you doing today? And first question, what coffee have you been drinking?
Yeah, doing well. Taking the day off from working today and drinking. This morning, I was drinking a new Costa Rican natural that we have coming in. So different than the one that you ordered. This one's really dope, man. You'll have to get some of this one.
Oh yeah,
Um,
your coffee's on my list now. It's going to be a regular thing for sure.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. Yeah, this will be a good one. So, yeah, just drinking on the sample that we have of that, and waiting. The order should be here. The badge should be here this week actually. So,
That's sick.
yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, pumped to get your coffee up. I'm like when I saw the one I'm getting this stronger, I was like, yeah, okay, that's my vibe. I'm on board for
yeah,
that.
sweet man.
Yeah, so obviously, for our listeners that don't know, many of my listeners will be Canadians and also a whole bunch of people from Northern Ireland because that's where I worked in coffee. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So from Jacksonville, Florida. Um, yeah, born and raised in the South. Uh, Played football, American football. I
Yeah,
guess Canada has American football too.
yeah, we do. We
Um,
do.
Played football at a small college in the middle of the country of America, Iowa, if you know where that is. And yeah, just kind of played football, got hurt, and felt like I really had this really cool, like, and this isn't coffee, but really cool spiritual experience where I want to go and just help out and be a positive impact for people. So that kind of started my working career. I ended up transferring schools and meeting my wife at a school down in South Georgia, closer to where I'm from. Um, and we moved back up to Iowa to go on staff with the nonprofit organization. Again, just wanted to help out. That moved us to Des Moines, Iowa, which is the capital. So hopefully you guys will follow me. And so in Des Moines, Iowa is kind of where my coffee career started. I was hospitality director for Chick-fil-A. And so my background has always been hospitality. How do you make people feel welcomed? Um, I got accepted to the certified training program, and I never actually began training because I received a job opportunity to work for this nonprofit coffee shop in the inner city of Des Moines. And so that's where coffee took off for me. That's where I learned how to roast. That's where I learned how to cup coffee and describe it. And I learned that I didn't, like certain coffees, and I learned that I love other coffees. And it was there that I really learned that coffee could be used to connect people who are different. And so, yeah, that's where it started. And from there, it's just I am where I am now,
Yeah.
because of that. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And just for you, so I work in hospitality as well.
okay,
So the leadership studio that I'm in right now is at a kind of like a summer camp, but it runs all year round. It's called Muskoka Woods. But the leadership studio is kind of its own division, and we work with everywhere from corporate groups to nonprofit organizations down to
hmm
resiliency students and stuff like that we bring here. So when we teach leadership skills and all that kind of stuff.
sweet.
So I get like the hospitality sort of side of it, and super cool to hear that you were a football player, because as you know, this
Uh huh.
podcast is sports and coffee, which is because that's the two things that I really love. And I
Yeah.
feel like the two things that really can connect people across lots of different boundaries, like whether it's political,
hmm
religious, whatever it is. And then awesome to hear as well
Yeah.
that um, you've got that spiritual side as well, because we are a Christian organization here at Muskoka Woods as well.
Oh, sweet.
So I'm a Christian as well. So it's really cool to hear that.
Okay. Yeah. Same.
It sounds like, yeah,
Yeah.
we got a lot lining up here. So before we dive into coffee, which will be
It's
kind of
so
the
funny. I was
majority.
like, no, go ahead. Go ahead. You good.
So before we dive into the coffee side of things, which I think will probably be the majority of our conversation, I want to talk a little bit about the sports side. So you said you played American football. What positions did you play? How
hmm
long did you play for?
Yeah. So I played. I've been playing football since eighth grade. I don't know how the grading system works in Canada.
It's the same. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been playing seventh grade actually. And so I played running back. Um is what I was recruited for. That was about 50 pounds ago. um, but yeah, I was recruited for that. And so my senior year of high school, first game, I tore my ACL.
Oh,
So my senior year, I only played 10 seconds, and so I lost a lot of my scholarship offers. I had scholarship offers to schools like Air Force Academy, Rutgers University.
wow.
Yeah, so a lot of I went on visits to Notre Dame. I went on visits to Florida State. And so, yeah, I lost a lot of those offers and then ended up going to the small schools in Iowa, who they gave me a ton of playing time, but I battled injuries my whole time there. And that's sort of where like my spiritual journey began because like football was taken away from me. So, yeah, so that's
Yeah.
part of my story.
So did you find, because I actually, so we have a leadership program in here that's specifically for athletes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big things we talked about is resilience and that ability to, because everybody's going to come up against something in sports
Mm-hmm.
specifically, whether it's an injury, getting cut from a team, or ending your career. Did you find
Mm-hmm.
your faith helped you through that? Is that kind of where that came from?
It was definitely birthed in that, and it helped me. And then it was also just a really good proving ground for me learning how to overcome adversity. Um, yeah, there are things in life now that I look back like, that I pushed through because of, you know, I didn't make that first down or I didn't win that starting spot, but I won it next year. So
Mhm.
yeah, sports definitely helped me. Was really like a launching pad into life. So
That's awesome to hear. That's
yeah,
that's pretty much exactly what we're trying to teach. So that's super cool.
awesome.
And I got to ask, are you a fan of the game outside of playing it?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, probably too much. I probably watch too much football,
Nah, there's no such thing
analyze
as
it too
too much
much.
football. There's no such thing. Okay, so who's your team? Do you have like a pro team and a college team that you cheer for?
Yeah, yeah. So college, I'm a Florida Gator fan just because I'm from 3 hours north of Gainesville,
Okay,
and
yeah.
then for football, Jacksonville Jaguars, just because it's my home team. So yeah.
Well, I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan because my
Okay.
dad my dad's from Fresno. He grew up there, and all his brothers and my older brother were 49ers fans. I grew up with a poster of Steve Young on my wall. Had no idea who he was
Oh,
when I was a
sweet.
kid, but
Uh,
so I'm sorry for your
that's
team right
cool, man.
now. I
I
understand you
know,
just
man. I
deal with a
know.
terrible thing.
I was almost ashamed to say what team I like. Can you ask
Oh
something?
man, don't worry. The 49ers have been rough for a long time, so
Yeah,
I feel your
yeah.
pain. Okay, that's rad. So yeah, how did you first get into specialty coffee? Like I find everybody that I
Mhm.
sort of talk to or that I know in specialty coffee has like an experience where it's like, oh
Yeah.
shoot, this is what coffee is. So did you
Mhm.
have that? What was your kind of transition?
Um. Yeah, I think that. So for me, ooh, that's a good question. So the shop that I initially worked at, I wouldn't classify it as specialty coffee. When I got there, I was well, I was part of like starting the coffee shop. It was run by the nonprofit, but they hired some managers to run it.
Mm,
And so I was trying to, turn it that way. But my first really introduction to specialty coffee was through coffee shops around the Des Moines area. I began going and began like I remember the first time, man, that I tasted a single origin espresso that I could drink and not like give the face to. I was like,
yeah.
what is this? Like what? And so it was really kind of like by osmosis that I kind of entered the specialty coffee realm, and then I ended up becoming the general manager of that coffee shop, and then I was like, we're making this a specialty coffee shop. Like we're only going to buy coffees that score above an 82. We're only going to do this. So yeah, so that I would say just kind of through osmosis, and Des Moines has a really big growing specialty coffee scene now. So um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's it. there's that experience of like that one coffee you have where you're just like, this is what coffee is meant to taste like. What have I been
Yeah,
drinking for like the
I
last?
know, man.
It's
So,
shocking. Yeah, I remember getting into it as well. It was the same thing. It was like, I think everybody's is like tends to be like in Ethiopia. You're just like, this tastes like blueberries. How is that possible?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that's a good one.
yeah.
So now you own a roastery, Happy Home
Okay.
Coffee, as we talked about. So what was the how did you transition from managing a coffee shop to now owning a roastery?
Yeah, man, it was rough. This is oh gosh, yeah, this is it's weird because like this coffee shop that I worked at, they're now going through a lot of hardships because of their so it's in a predominantly black neighborhood, but it's run by predominantly upper affluent white males.
Hmm.
And so there's just been a lot of issues with it, and then I ran into a lot of stuff, man. Just like ready to retire with that company, but like needing more income. Um, you know, our communication as far as like what was expected out of me, like I felt like we were just not hearing each other, man. I was like, we're work training program. That's what we did. And I'm like getting these young adults like jobs, and the coffee shop like is not bringing in a ton of money, but like we're trending upward, and they wanted me to be more of a manager, and so we just kind of like we're just missing each other, and so um, I was just super stressed out, man, and super unhappy.
Yeah.
I felt like my home life. I have 3 kids. At the time, I only had 2. I felt like my home life was struggling because I was always coming home anxious and wasn't sleeping well. And I think there was just a point where either my wife said it or I said it, just like we should start our own coffee company. And we were just throwing out names, and I was like, well, what do you want to create? And I was like, well, I just want to create a happy home. And I was like, oh, that's the name. That's the name. And so, yeah, I think uh, I'm like a 0 to 100 type of person. And so I immediately like began to research the name and make sure that we're the only people who had it. And I went ahead and registered the LLC right then and there. And so, yeah, I guess the process has been hard. I left that coffee shop in um, May of 2019, and I went and I was just barista for a couple different coffee shops while I built a business on the side. I just did some side hustle stuff to provide, and we didn't have any loans. We didn't take out any loans. It was just like we're self funding everything. I was working on I have it over here, a small Hucky 500 that is like this tiny little roaster, and we're just kind of like bootstrapping it for the lack of a better words. And then slowly but surely I got a contract to roast for another company in Des Moines who is just killing it in Des Moines. And that was really when we began to see some headway because like they were just giving me a lot of opportunities to kind of flex some of my entrepreneurial muscles as far as like developing roast profiles, but also thinking strategically about how I roast with intentionality, and it was just providing a really good income from us. And then obviously that stopped because of COVID, and then we were moving as well, and so but yeah, I could think this past year has been an uphill journey, man. We're finally starting. I was texting a good friend of mine last night, and I was just telling her like we're finally starting to see a lot of the fruit from our sacrifices because I dropped my income, man. Probably, I think I made like 15 grand less last year just to
Wow.
start this company. So, but it's the hard work is starting to pay off, and we're starting to see a lot of opportunities come up, and like stuff like this, like being able to share our story. So it's been hard. Starting a business is hard. Everything they tell you is going to be is hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man. It's. I mean, just hearing this, the story of you having to deal with the stuff at a shop that you had, obviously had a lot of stake in, and we're
Mhm.
managing, and just even as we, with what's going on in the world right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, and the real push for actual change that's happening in the
Mhm.
world, and the transparency that's coming out in all these industries, as people are like, yeah, I'm going to speak up
Yeah.
now. And I think in
Yeah.
coffee, people might have thought, oh, it's progressive, it's all this stuff, and I think the people outside the industry seem to think that. And then when you get in, I obviously I have not experienced it. I worked in coffee for 2 years. I'm also a white male. And so
Yeah.
it didn't even cross my mind that these were things. And as I started reading stories, and even about, sexism in the workplace, and
Mhm.
just straight up, discrimination, and all this kind of stuff that people have to go through, it's like, no, coffee was not immune. In fact, it's bad. And so
Yeah.
hearing these stories come out has been really cool. So I just want to ask you, like, can you
Mhm.
sort of talk about what it's been like as a Black man in a
Yeah.
predominantly white owned industry? What kind of things have you had to, come up against? How have you been able to get through that?
I think the biggest thing that I struggle with is not being believed when I say that, hey, this is like this person reacted this way because like they were afraid of me, or like they had this preconceived notion. Or I think at this other coffee shop it was um I mean just the cultural differences of not knowing how to communicate with one another. And you know, from the outside looking in, it was like I was killing it. Like I had been, we were part of the Chamber of Commerce. I was like the youngest and only Black male voted to the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce. Like
Wow.
we were in the community. Um, we won best new business of the year for the chamber. Like all this stuff was happening, yet like I kept hearing, "You're not doing your job," and so um, I don't know, man. It's been hard because I just feel like my most consistent experience is just being misunderstood. Um, and call that systemic or call that whatever. It just is what it is. Is that most Black and brown people, women included in this as well, in organizations that are predominantly white, male led, those minority employees are usually misunderstood or not believed when they say that they're experiencing certain things. And so that was my experience. It's just like I felt like I was doing my job. I was being affirmed by my customers. Like our ratings were through the roof. Our coffee was improving, and yet it was, we're not going to give you this raise because you're not meeting our expectations. And there was just no communication. And so I don't want to assume anyone's motives, but it seemed racist to me. Like it seemed like, man, like we don't trust this guy, whether that be because of whatever things you want to fabricate. But to me, it felt like you didn't trust me because my experiences and my culture was different than me. And so I just left, and it was sad, man. I cried a lot, and still trying to heal from those moments. So luckily, very soon after that, though, I applied for this nonprofit specialty coffee competition training called Glitter Cat. I don't know if you've heard of Glitter Cat, um, but they're an organization specifically aimed at providing barista, roasting, taster's cup, like all those like competition, U.S. competitions. They're aimed at providing training for those for marginalized people. And so I applied for that, and I was like 10 out of however many people applied in the country that got it. And that was really big for me because I came in limping. I was just like limping and hurt and licking my wounds,
Yeah.
really feeling like, man, I started this company and after leaving my salary job with benefits, and I left there just really feeling empowered and feeling heard is really the biggest thing. And um, yeah, it was really good timing for me. So I think, yeah. So I guess to sum up everything that I'm saying, like my experience as a black man, especially coffee, has been one of I don't really know how to get into like the niche of different trainings. I feel like I have a lot to offer as far as like my hospitality training and like how that lends itself to the cafe settings. But things like this are slowly but surely opening, and so I'm hopeful. I really am hopeful. I think that people are starting to finally listen and believe our experiences, and so um,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah, man. I think yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I like. First of all, just appreciate your willingness to share and your experiences and kind of open the eyes of the some of our listeners and just people in the industry in general, because
Hmm.
it, it pretty much the definition of like white privilege is just the fact that we don't even know these experiences are happening, right? Because they don't
Mm,
affect us. And the more I hear stories, the more I try to listen to stories, the more I start to understand like, wow, there's just these behaviors that you don't even notice that are really harmful. And yeah, I think that's the key, is just sitting down and listening. And I think that's one of the really cool things about coffee
yeah.
and sports as an extension, is it's this thing that really encourages conversation. When you sit down,
Hmm.
it's a stimulant, right? When you sit down, you drink it, your brain starts going. And even as you go back in history through coffee shops, they were known as penny universities because they were places you could come and learn for free. Essentially, you pay a penny for your coffee and you just sit there and listen to you know philosophers and professors and all this kind of stuff. And I think
Yeah.
that if we can, people can use coffee to leverage those things again and really kind of
Mhm.
push the culture forward. And the more I've made the effort, because when all this started happening, I kind of went through my coffee Instagram feed and was like, okay, this is very white. So let's change
Mm,
that. So went and found all these incredible roasters and these incredible people like you, Carlos, and Bartholomew Jones, and the coffee enthusiast, and Patria Coffee,
yeah.
all these places that are doing, Get You Some Gear, all these places that are doing the most incredible things. I'm just like, why isn't everybody like seeing this? So, and I think that's the really cool thing about what's happening, is it's really opening. People are looking to support Black businesses and all this kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, I guess a question just sort of to shift the conversation is, when you went from being a barista to roasting, what were
Mhm.
some of like I guess the biggest differences, as someone who worked as a barista and was interested in roasting? Um, like what was, new and exciting, what was challenging, what were those kind of things that maybe you weren't expecting?
Yeah. Well, I started off roasting, and so I had to
Okay.
learn the barista side of it. Uh, yeah. So the barista side is very personable, right? Like you're not just making people's drink, but you're trying to deliver this experience to them through the cup, but also through your interactions with them, even if they're limited. Um, you got these. Uh, when I was with, oh man, I might be giving away too much information, but anyway, when I was with when I was with Chick-fil-A, we had this term that we want to create tweetable moments, right? So
Okay.
like moments that people could go and like tweet real fast, like, hey, I had this really dope experience. Da, da, da. So that was the biggest thing that I learned being a barista was I had the opportunity to create tweetable moments. So trying to meet people's needs before they even know they had them. So um, yeah. So with roasting though, it's very methodical. It's and that lends itself to me as a person is I come in the roasting room the same way, put my apron on, wash my hands the same way, glove up, put my mask on. Like um, when I'm charging the coffee, like I'm doing everything the same way. I have my roast recipes written there, and so yeah, the biggest difference is like you're in the roasting room by yourself, and then you switch to the barista. You're like all you're doing is talking to people. You're talking to your coworkers, you're talking to customers, you're constantly moving. It's yes, it's a really big difference. It's like night and day.
Yeah.
Um, But it was a wild time to say the least. So baristing all day and then coming home and just having to sit and roast. So
Yeah, that's hectic. Like having to do
yeah.
both. I was like working as a barista, you're just on your feet for 8-9 hours of the day, and
Woo.
I was sitting on the couch and playing Madden. Like
Hmm.
I'm not getting into a roasting room and pouring pounds of coffee into a roaster as well. That is, yeah, you really were
I was
grinding.
hustling, man. I had 3 jobs and two kids. My wife
Yeah,
was pregnant, and we were just was hustling. And luckily, I had a really good church community that helped us balance our life well, and who would watch the kids so we can get a date night, or just encourage us on the way and let us serve coffee at church and stuff like that. So
yeah. So with Happy Home, you have, I love the story about finding the name, but you also have this really interesting sort of vision statement. Can you tell us a little bit about that, where
yeah,
that came from, what sort of the goal of it is, how it informs your decision making, all that kind of stuff?
yeah, it's similar to what you said. Just about the coffee shop being the place where these dialogues could happen, and that's what I was noticing working in the coffee shop was that. Sorry, my son's trying to get in the door. Um, that's sort of what I was noticing was that the coffee shop and coffee in general is a extremely dope and vulnerable place for people to cultivate joy and belonging. And that was the thing that I felt like I was missing in the coffee industry was I wasn't happy and I didn't feel like I belonged there. And I think for many people, my experience is just that that's really what we're all searching for. We're searching for happiness and we're searching for somewhere to belong. And I think that coffee has the unique opportunity to do that. Not because the coffee's dope. Like we want the coffee to be dope and we want the coffee to, you know, tickle all your taste buds and whatnot. But more so than that, we want the coffee to be the catalyst to create change, to create, you know, cultural change. We want it to be a place where we can discuss ideas, a place where people's preconceived notions about a certain group of people can just be diminished because they're in this intimate relationship with the coffee and this person. So, yeah, our mission statement, vision statement is to cultivate joy and belonging. That's what we want to do. If we make really good coffee and don't bring people closer to each other, and bring more unity and peace in the world, and I think we failed as a company. So, um, yeah, man, it's it's not only our coffee shop's mission. It's my family. Like our family has that mission statement.
Hmm.
That's what we exist. The Sims family exists to cultivate joy and belonging. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And sort of as I've, when I first found your company and started looking at your website and your Instagram and stuff like that, it was just really clear that your family's mission, your personal mission was so intertwined with this company that
Hmm.
there's not really a difference. It's this place where, yeah, that's the goal, is to create, is to cultivate the belonging piece. And I just think
Yeah.
that's just such a awesome pursuit. And what I think, yeah, you're right. Like the industry has created the opposite of in certain cases, like just as more stories come out, we're seeing. Um, so I guess like along those lines, what would you want to see, change in the industry so that that joy and belonging becomes more prevalent?
Yeah. It's a good question, man. I think there's a ton you could do. I think that the biggest thing that cafes and coffee shops can do is creating environments where people feel welcome, man. I think that I've gone into so many coffee shops where like I've walked in and it just felt so sterile and that I'm just like, oh, okay, like I don't really fit here or they don't want me to stay here long. And I just think that like that's just the easy way, man. Designing cafes and coffee shops to feel more welcoming and everybody's going for different things, and so like I guess to each of its own. But to me, like I think that's the easy way to start. I think another way is the way that baristas interact with customers. a lot of specialty coffee shops that I've been into, like the baristas, have not been very nice. And in Des Moines, it's a little different because most of those people are my friends. But like if I travel anywhere else outside and I ask for, hey, what do you have on espresso or what's a one in one? It's like, I don't know. It's just a vibe that they give off that like we're gonna us up here, we're gonna come down and we're gonna talk to you about this thing. And I just think that um, when I walk into a coffee shop, I wanna know that people are excited that I'm here. I want it to feel like a family environment. And I want them to be excited about the coffee, but I also want them to be excited about me as the person.
Hmm.
And I think that's the shift that needs to happen. Is like there's so much focus on the coffee, but I think that I think that's good. Like we're the coffee industry. That's what we're supposed to do. But we also have to recognize that like the coffee industry are made up of individuals who have souls and they have belongings and people carry hurts. And I think that needs to be what we lead with. So, um, yeah, I could talk all day about this.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's where I would start.
man, that line, coffee is made up of individuals who have souls. That's, man,
Yeah.
like, that's powerful. That's like to think about. And something that I talk a lot about, like most of my friends, I would say, are not necessarily specialty coffee people. Like obviously in
Hmm.
Canada, we have this thing called Tim Hortons, which is like,
Mm,
it was like the only coffee for years and years and years in Canada. Like
really?
when
Okay.
Starbucks came, that was like a big deal. Tim Hortons is like, you'll be in in like Toronto and there's three within like 2 blocks of each other. Like that's what it was like.
Wow.
And it's, it was a donut place. It was started by a hockey player. Like it's the most Canadian thing you could think of. But like the drink to get is like, people call it a double double, and it's 2 sugar, 2 cream. And
Okay.
it's like, that's what most people grew up drinking. And so when when Starbucks first came to Canada, that was like a big deal. That was like specialty
Hmm.
coffee to people. So the culture here is really new. But it's trying to, when people go from buying like a coffee that cost them $1.50 to going to a specialty shop and a coffee costing $5, and it's probably smaller, people don't
Hmm.
get why that is. And
Yeah.
trying to explain to people that when you're paying $1.50 for your coffee and there's 20 people involved in the chain, who do you think is getting ripped off?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a family at
Jeez.
origin who's owned a farm for generations, who cares
Hmm.
so much about what they're doing and is getting paid literally nothing. Like they don't make
Yeah.
profit, they don't make any of this. And so trying to educate people on that side of things, that like there's people involved in this. It's not just press button, get coffee. It's
Hmm.
like, no, it's a family thing. Like they learned from their, parents, and they're teaching their
Hmm.
kids. And it comes to a roaster who's trying their best to magnify what that farmer's done. And then you get to the barista who, maybe takes a little bit longer because like they have the responsibility of the 20 people behind them who cared
Exactly. Yeah.
in order to show you this end product. And
Hmm.
I think if more people could understand that it's not just this drink, right? And we're getting into the whole like history and
Yeah.
culture, like the Oromo people and all that kind of stuff. That is going to
Yeah.
be another podcast.
Oh, sweet, sweet.
But yeah, so but that line, yeah, like I love that. That's
Yeah, man. It just is, dude. People matter. People matter more than coffee, and that's just the truth. Like whether people want to admit it or not, like without people, there would be no coffee.
yeah.
And so that needs to be our first priority, especially in the cafe settings. And I'm speaking specifically to the cafe settings because like that's what our company is moving toward. Like we want to have either a mobile cafe or a standalone cafe. We haven't decided that yet,
Hmm.
but just trying to drill into our hearts and our heads and our processes that people matter. So we pay way above the C market value for coffee. Like we work exclusively, not exclusive. Let me see. We probably work with if we have 6 coffees that we work with right now, 5 of those are probably micro lots, small farms.
Hmm.
So people just matter. We're trying to drill that into our company and our practices. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome to hear. Like that's where I think, like, as people become more aware of, just social justice issues, they're going to be looking for more of that. And you can see it in people's buying practices and all that kind of stuff. It's like you can sign petitions, you can vote and all this kind of stuff, but a big part of your impact is where you put your money, right? It's where you spend your dollars, because that is what unfortunately creates the change. So I'm really excited that I got your coffee coming. I've got some coffee coming from Coffee Black and from Ethnos Coffee as well.
Sweet.
That's gonna fill my already ridiculously stocked coffee shelf, but it's just all so cool. I just learned all these new people and all these new coffees, so I'm super excited. And Carlos, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing your heart and your passion for this, and super excited to just connect further and get to know you a little bit more, and we'll be like rooting for your company and getting your coffee and sharing it out and trying to get more people to see you and all that kind of stuff. But thanks for taking the time with us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, see you later, man.
See you.
So that was Carlos Sims Jr. from Happy Home Coffee Roasters. Incredible conversation with Carlos. And if you guys want to check him out, go follow his coffee roastery. It's at Happy Home Coffee. I'm excited to get their coffee up, as I said in the podcast. And if you want to support a new business, go give him a follow and order some of his coffee. Super pumped to get it up. Sounds delicious, and Carlos is a rad human. So there's that as well. You get to support small business, you get to support a rad human, and you get delicious coffee. So it's a win-win-win all around. So that's our episode for today. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you continue listening to Pass the Brew, because we've got a whole bunch of other really awesome guests lined up to talk about coffee, to talk about sports, and just to talk in general, just to have conversations, because that's what this is all about. We're here for conversations and connections. So until next time, I'm Mark Cunningham, your host, and this has been Pass the Brew.